Hello and welcome to Catholic Family News Special Report. We have a really important show today where we're going to discuss breaking news from the Diocese of Charlotte, North Carolina. As was reported on our website, which I think we are the first to really break this story, on December the 19th, we reported, and you can see this report again on our website, that it appears the axe is about to fall on most diocesan traditional Latin masses in Charlotte, the Diocese of Charlotte. A big crackdown coming to substantially reduce the number of traditional masses in that diocese. So we're going to have joining our show today two people who are on the ground to really fill out this story for us and tell us what's going on. We first have the reporter that broke this story, Brian Mershon, who is a nationally recognized reporter. He's written for many different publications, including Catholic Family News. He's been contributed, for those of you who read our monthly newspaper, you will have seen his name there. And then we're also going to be joined by Jim De Piante, who is a longtime in the trenches traditional mass fighter. He and his family founded one of the early Latin Mass communities there, St. Anthony of Padua, which we'll speak about. And he has been in the trenches defending the true Mass for decades. So welcome to Catholic Family News, gentlemen.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And so we started off, as reported by you yesterday, as we're filming this on December 19th. There seems to be a big axe about to fall. So why don't you just introduce a little bit what we know, and then we'll go back and explain what this really means in Charlotte. So Brian, why don't you tell us what you've discovered?
Yeah, certainly. From this issue is one that I've been covering as a journalist for Catholic publications, not since the Pope's document, but shortly thereafter. And as much as possible, I've been trying to write stories as essentially the axe falls in various dioceses around the United States. In this case, there were strong rumors, and yes, they were rumors then. As we know, a lot of times rumors in Rome just means that it's going to take longer than what the rumors take to happen. That the eyeball of Rome is on Charlotte. It's been a thriving diocese. Lots of people from the north, and economic boom for years has been driving the population up in that diocese and around the Charlotte area, and even down into northern South Carolina. So what was reported or initially rumored was they were going to go down to just a handful of masses for Sundays. The Charlotte diocese had grown to having more than a dozen. It might have even been up to about 20, I believe, was one figure I'd heard, where various priests were saying them, say, on Thursday nights or Saturdays, and weren't necessarily doing them every Sunday. So they had a whole cadre of young priests that were very interested in and having the traditional Latin Mass being very wide and generous with the application of it, as Pope John Paul II initially had asked for. So anyway, so what happened this week was I had a couple of well-known sources. They weren't direct links to the diocese. They weren't priests, but people who were insistent that this was happening and was inevitable, was happening. So and again confirmed confirmed at least in one diocesan bulletin that's up on site now. So.
Again, yes, this update on Mass according to Missale Romano of 1962 is now posted on this church's website. So again, it's certainly more than a rumor. These facts has been confirmed. So, but maybe if we go back a little bit, because it'd say it's reduced to 4, it doesn't maybe mean very much. If there were none, having 4 would be an improvement. But let's talk about the history of tradition in North Carolina. And Jim, maybe you can join us here, since you've been there for so long. Tell us a little bit about the history. When did the Mass first return, or did it ever leave Charlotte? Let's give us a little history.
Sure. It actually it never left. In the mid-60s and throughout the 70s, there was a small group of folks, a group which my parents affiliated with in 1973 timeframe, which sought out priests who would say the traditional mass in their parish churches until there was a definitive end put to that. Then they would meet wherever they could find to have the mass said for them. In the end, the then Bishop Begley authorized one priest and then another to say the mass in a diocesan church for them. Each of those men, in turn, they were older priests. Each of those men, in turn, died, and they were left without. Now, sometimes they would go all the way up to Washington, D.C. To a mass up there with, I think it was Father Ringrose. 1981 time frame. A group of folks in Charlotte and a group of folks in Raleigh in the Greensboro area decided the time had come to invite the Society of St. Pius X, and so they did. There was a chapel started in the Raleigh area, in Goldsboro, and then in Charlotte. And when I say chapel, I mean Raleigh and Charlotte in particular, very small. Goldsboro, they actually ended up buying a nice old church there. And those three missions have been operating faithfully, served sacrificially and faithfully by priests of the Society of St. Pius X for over 40 years. When the indult became popular, 1984, when John Paul signed the October indult in 83, I guess it was, a fair number of folks went to diocesan masses. At the time, several of us founded what we called the Society of Traditional Roman Catholics. We sponsored the first diocesan mass since it had been, essentially since 1969. The first Tridentine Mass, it was a sung Mass at St. Leo's in Winston-Salem. And the so-called indult Mass thrived for some time. The bishop at the time was Bishop Donahue. He seemed in favor, but then something changed, and it was put to an end. When that happened, the number of people attending Society of St. Pius X, not surprisingly, increased. It went from Mass not reliably every Sunday to reliably every Sunday in Charlotte. We ended up at the Junior League of Charlotte, and we're there for quite some time. In the summer of 2000, we found an old Methodist church out in Mount Holly. We were able to buy the church. Father Novak was our priest. Father Kenneth Novak was our priest at the time. We bought the church, and we've been there ever since. We enlarged it at one point to accommodate some, 4 or 5 more rows of pews and about a dozen rows, so maybe 50 additional people. There you go. And we've had our ups and downs. Lately, it's been a very strong up trajectory. 2 of the big drivers on that were COVID, the sacrifices that our priests made to provide people at least with confession and communion in a very hostile environment during COVID tide.
It's odd. North Carolina was one of those red states that kind of acted like a blue state in COVID, didn't they? They were pretty strict with it.
Charlotte is different from the rest of the Carolinas. Charlotte is, look, the Carolinas are essentially rural outside of Charlotte, and so Charlotte's a little bit different. And so it was a struggle, but the sacrifices that these priests made inspired a great many people.
Right.
When Traditionis Custodes came along.
Well, I guess before we get Traditionis Custodes, and Brian, jump in here as well, tell us a little bit more about, outside of St. Anthony of Padua, which has been going, as you say, for a long time, how did the diocesan traditional masses grow? And do you have kind of an estimate of maybe how many priests had been saying it after Summorum Pontificum?
That's you, Brian Mershon.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So I will. These will be guesstimates, so they will be rough. But I wrote a story. I wrote a story for the Remnant when was actually permission was granted by Rome. The bishop went to Rome to ask, after the laity had started a petition and it had asked after Summorum Pontificum to have it. I'd be guessing too much. It's probably longer ago than I thought. It's probably been 10 years. It might even be longer than that. And what I can tell you is in Charlotte proper, all right, I'm not talking about the 4 that are going to be left, but I'm talking about the two that are every Sunday in Charlotte right now, there's up to they've said up to 400 sometimes at St. Anne's, which is in downtown Charlotte, or before you get to downtown Charlotte, usually probably 300-ish, and then also Thomas Aquinas, which is downtown Charlotte, and that one's another 200, 250. So roughly you've probably got 500 to 600 Catholics on every Sunday basis attending mass in what were essentially the indult parishes in Charlotte. And again, there's others in the Charlotte diocese that aren't Charlotte proper, and I don't have all that information in front of me. I'm sure I could get it, but I don't have that. So I mean, very well attended. And they also, until 3 years ago, it might have been COVID, but it might have been even before that. They also even had the Easter Triduum for several years for at least one location that was diocesan. Diocesan.
They're allowing certainly confirmations according to the old rite, marriages, first communions. Our Bishop Peter Jugas instituted a minor seminary where men were being formed to say the traditional mass. Charlotte is generally has been seen historically as very tradition friendly.
Right. Yes. And right now more than 40 seminarians. That was the last article I wrote. More than 40 seminarians, and I've been told again by very reliable sources that more than half of them are extremely interested in wanting to say the traditional mass, which is one of and the seminary itself, when it was opened just a few years ago, might have been 5 or less years ago, was promoted by people to donate to, that it was going to be open to both forms of the Roman Rite. So,
I mean, in a certain sense, Charlotte is a hotbed of traditional vocation.
Yep.
Which may be why it drew Rome's eye, possibly. But then we get to Traditionis Custodes, the prison guardian of tradition document. And so what was the first reaction of the bishop in the diocese there? Did things get cut right away in 2021, or what happened in July of 2021 after that document?
Nothing.
Right.
Basically, look, I'm an outsider looking in. I don't know what goes on behind closed doors in the chancery, but nothing happened. It seemed very clear that it was going to be ignored. Phrases like, "We'll take this into deliberation." Okay. Then things started to happen. I think the first shoe to drop was the cancellation of the Triduum. And that was taken very hard by the faithful of the diocese.
Yes.
Then
filled up your chapel pretty much, right?
Filled up the chapel. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Then confirmations, first communions, and marriages. One at a time.
And I've heard the new document that's going to specifically mention baptisms, which I guess whether those have been being allowed or people have been just doing them, I don't know. But that I'd also heard that baptisms were going to be cut even at the 4 locations. So.
Then I think probably one of the most disconcerting occurrences was when the mass, the traditional mass that had been being offered at the seminary was then curtailed.
Right. Yep. That was before summer of last year. They had it not only on Sundays, but they had also had it various times during the week as well. I was never able to nail anybody down on it, but they had it various times during the week, and then that was ended. So, yep.
So now it appears, and again, we have confirmation of this from a church bulletin posted online. What's going to happen now going forward?
Well, it's rumors, but fairly credible rumors,
right,
that we have 2 years in the diocese in 4 parish churches. Nothing has been said about whether those 4 parish churches will have the mass relegated to a gymnasium.
Right.
But
or schoolrooms, all those things that happen in Arlington, right?
But that's clearly the intent of Traditionis Custodes. And so we can speculate that that's likely to happen. But then the persistent rumor is we've been given an indult to do this for 2 years from a date sometime past, And by the way, this is alluded. It's not. It's specifically articulated in the bulletin that this is a 2-year deal, and so from that we can conclude that in 2 years from when the indult was granted, that we should expect that it will be curtailed completely.
Yeah, that's clear in both documents that it talks about. It's not these words, but it talks about assimilating the lay people to like the Novus Ordo and to be educated and catechized so that they won't care about whether they're going to traditional mass. I mean, that's in the documents itself. I mean, it's a lot. I don't think it was well expressed at the time, but that's in the document.
It seems eminently clear to me. You will be assimilated.
Yeah, exactly. Resistance is futile, right?
Right.
Now, and again, to be clear, these 4 locations that are left, that we're not talking downtown Charlotte, which you were discussing earlier. This is the entire diocese, which encompasses more than the downtown.
Yeah. There are 2 other ones, and I'm just not going to speculate. There are 2 other. There's 6 right now. There's 2 of them that are going to be curtailed, and to go beyond that would be speculation. So there's probably going to be at least 1 in Charlotte. Maybe they keep the 2. I mean, they're the 2 most well attended. And then there's 1 in Greensboro, which I believe is also Charlotte Diocese, and then 1 or 2 in other places. I can't remember exact locations of the other ones. So
right. So reduced, and again, the letter according to the St. Margaret Mary Church Bulletin, is dated October 2nd, 2023. And then it refers to a letter of the bishop to the priest just December 6th, informing them of this, quote, permission that was granted for it to continue in 4 locations. And it ends, specifically this church, St. Margaret Mary, which appeared to have had a Latin Mass, is going to end there. But you get a consolation prize. They might actually conform to the documents of Vatican II and preserve the Latin language to be preserved.
Sure. Yeah. And Gregorian chant and all that stuff that we've heard for years.
Right.
The expression "throwing them a bone" comes to
right.
Exactly.
Yep.
So obviously, with this going, as you said, from 6 to 4, and probably a 2-year run. We don't have proof of that, but sounds like, and this is consistent with other dioceses, that they've been given 2 years to shut it down. How is I think you're right, Jim. Society of St. Pius X, St. Anthony of Padua is likely to grow. What's happening with that church? Is there plans in place or for growth or ability to absorb more Catholics who are going to have to go there?
If we know nothing about what's going on in the diocese,
right,
we see people showing up at the doors. We see a church that barely holds 160 people, and then now we have to. Well, the first thing we did was we put on another mass.
Right.
And so we went from 1 mass where we didn't fill the church to now 2 masses, one where we fill the church and one where we almost fill the church. But at the one where we fill the church, we actually put 40 people or more downstairs watching on a screen.
Wow. And
so just completely abstracting from what's going on in the diocese, we have the reality that we have. We're not, our building is not big enough. What do? You can't do nothing. And so we're going to build a bigger building. From that line from
if you build it, they will come, right?
For Sidney Poitier in Lilies of the Field, we build a chapel. So we're going to build a chapel. We're going to build a bigger chapel.
So will this be on the same property, or are you having to locate?
No possibility. The property we have would not hold the parking lot of the building we intend to build.
Oh, wow. So what size church does it sound like from what you know in the works?
600 people.
600. Wow.
600. Yeah. So quadruple in size, 2 acres for parking lot.
Wow. So again, when God allows or permits some tragedy like this, some attack, he certainly always provides. God, what did he say to St. Paul? My grace is sufficient, right? We don't need to despair, because even if Pope Francis and his henchmen do these kinds of things, God will provide, as he's done in Charlotte there for the last 50, 60 years. Let me ask both of you then, before we maybe wrap this up, why do you think your bishop there, he's been very friendly in the past, very open. Why do you think he's finally allowing this to happen and not resisting it? Not originally he just sort of did nothing in 2021. Why do you think he's letting the axe fall? Again, I know this is speculation, but what's your speculation?
Because he took some heat. I mean, you saw the announcement in the bulletin.
Mm-hmm.
This poor priest said, "This is not your bishop doing this.
Right.
This comes from the Vatican."
Yeah.
Peter Jugas has done what he can, but he's feeling the heat. He's feeling the pressure. Now, as to why he wouldn't just say, like Marcel Lefebvre said, like Castro de Meyer said, we're not going along with this. I don't know. We all have to live with ourselves.
Sure.
We pray for him. We pray for him. We pray earnestly for him.
Well, it's not like the Vatican would sort of just remove him from his diocese or anything. I mean, they don't
or
do
anything
that.
like that, or take away his apartment in Rome.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't really happen.
yeah, and in the context too is, and again, the Charlotte diocese. I don't know about total number of Catholics, but the Charlotte diocese, as far as the number of locations that the Latin Mass was being said, and again, a lot of it on weekdays or on Saturday mornings, not on Sundays, was comparable to Arlington, Virginia, which I believe had the largest one of the whole entire United States. I mean, like in burgeoning and a seminary where they're learning the Latin Mass and they're going to the Latin Mass in the seminary or in the college of the seminary, etc. So, obviously they're trying to stamp out, not just the existence, but the roots of all of it as well. And, initially this whole entire document was issued against the priest to keep the priest. Every priest has to be approved. And as far as what I've read everywhere, none's been approved. No new ones that are not, priests that are from traditional orders have been approved. So, I mean, most people in the United States wouldn't think Charlotte's a mecca or a hotbed of traditional Catholicism, but it really is. Again, I'll just add this. I'm not in the Charlotte diocese. I'm in the one south of there, in South Carolina.
Charleston.
And the same thing in the upstate and throughout, at least in the upstate of South Carolina, is happening as well. I mean, not diocesan, but from the lay people and from the diocesan traditional mass we have, they're growing by leaps and bounds. I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to get too much into our personal situation right now, but it's that the whole Charlotte, North Carolina, South Carolina area has lots of people moving from the Northeast, probably because of COVID and other things and warmer weather, etc. And people at our local Latin Mass, there are people coming in every week, lots of them that we don't even know. And my wife and I have been here for 30 years, and there are lots of them that we don't even know. So it's
two observations. Charlotte had often been compared to Savannah and Arlington in terms of its friendliness toward the Mass. And Charlotte, North Carolina actually is home to the single largest parish church in the country.
Oh.
Not in terms of physical size of the building. That honor belongs somewhere out in California. But in terms of number of parishioners, St. Matthew's in Charlotte, North Carolina is the largest church in the United States.
And burgeoning over just a handful of years. I mean, it's more than 10, but burgeoning.
It didn't exist. It didn't exist 2 decades ago.
Yes. Yep.
Well, and I think you're right. Clearly, the purpose of Traditionis Custodes is we've got to keep this away from younger people. We've seen this. We've reported on the recent comments of Cardinal Gregory in D.C. The whole point was after the old priests in the 1970s died off, it was all supposed to go away. And we see that didn't work out for them. They're now almost 60 years in, and it didn't die. It flourished. So it's unfortunate they don't seem to learn from their predecessors that this is of God, as Gamaliel told the Sanhedrin. If this is of God, you're not going to be able to stop it. If it's of man, don't worry about it. It'll fall apart. But they seem not to have learned that lesson. So tradition.
Yeah. And the thing is that the two previous pontificates explicitly, especially through the Pontifical Commission Ecclesia Dei with Cardinal Castrian Hoyos, always denied that was the case. That it was just supposed to be for the older people, and then not be exposed to young people. They denied that multiple times. So it's almost like they think the whole history before them has been erased, and none of us are smart enough. I mean, I'm older, but I mean, it wasn't that long ago. So.
Well, that's again a Marxist technique. You erase
Right.
history and replace it with your new history.
Well, and then there's the Hegelian dialectic. I mean, so we put out this crazy document that says we're going to bless these guys, but it can't look like a marriage. And then all of a sudden we're backpedaling from that, but it's already been put in people's minds.
Oh yeah, of course.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, great. Well, thank you, Brian, for your reporting this, for letting us break this story. Anything else? Any final words either of you'd like to add before we go?
I'll go first and let Jim wrap it up, because he's the man, and he's been the one around him and his parents and everybody else for years. I will say, the Diocese of Charlotte, for the multiple times that I've called in the diocese, has been very professional and very cordial, and very professional from a journalistic standpoint. They did offer me, prior to running the story, the potential to interview one of their priests that's in charge of this. So I'm still more than happy to write a story on it. I'm sure, Brian, you'd be more than happy to publish it. I'm not going to speak for you. But where there's smoke, there's fire. And, again, everybody keeps going back to rumors and rumors that happen. No, this is the same rumor. This is the same rumor as was before the summer. And you know how things work slowly in the Vatican and everywhere else. So, I mean, this is what was already being talked about months ago, earlier this year. So,
Jim, we'll give you the last word.
All right, thank you kindly. I would simply like to tell the faithful in the Diocese of Charlotte that St. Anthony's is a lovely, lovely place. It's very welcoming. We guarantee you that the priest there will only ever offer the traditional sacraments. We will welcome you when you have no place else to go, just like we've been doing for 42 years.
Amen.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Jim, for all you've done in your family, clearly to work for tradition there. Thank you. And thank you, viewers, for watching this report. As I always tell you, we don't have the money to promote our content through various channels, so we rely on you to subscribe, like, comment upon, and forward this video or audio podcast to your contacts. And please help us to spread the word about stories like this, as well as remember our partnership with Angelico Press. If you go to angelicopress.com/Catholic Family News, a portion of your purchases of their incredible Catholic books there will go to support free podcasts like this one. So you can help us by buying excellent Catholic books like Christopher R's Liberty to God That Failed, or my own book, which is not nearly as good as Chris's, To Build the City of God. So please visit and help us while buying good Catholic books. So thank you, gentlemen. I hope you both have a wonderful Christmas. And God bless everyone.
All right. Thank you, Brian.